Shalom. I want to start off by giving all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham Rakakwadash. Yahweh is the true, holy, and powerful name of the Heavenly Father. Bahasham, meaning of the name. Yahweh Shai is the true, holy, and powerful name of His only begotten Son, who is the Savior of the nation of Israel, starting off with the elect within the nation of Israel. And Israel consists of you so-called Negroes, Hispanics, and Native Americans, as well as your Israelite foreigners scattered abroad that may look like the nations where you've been scattered to, but are Israelites. And I also want to give divine honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone who rule well. Peace and salutations to the hopeful elect, pushing out this word in all sincerity and in truth. All right, this is the brother you called from the GMS branch out in Des Moines, Iowa, coming back at you with another lesson inspired by the Holy Spirit, Habakkuk Kodash. And what I want to go into today is I want to tap into our culture. All right, certain things in the ancient world, man. You know how children were being brought up. And I want to address the marriageable age. All right, issue that Jake has, get all emotional about, but once you understand our culture, it's very clear. It's understood why. All right. Women were given off at an early age. All right. The expectations were completely different. All right. Children, men and women were way more mature. All right. They were being brought up, to work and labor within the household, to be an essential part, all right, of the household, and to take care of different tasks and so on and so forth, man. Whereas in this society, women and men are they aren't expected to be responsible until they reach around 18 or different things of that nature. Are really they're not as mature as they would have been in the ancient world. I'm talking about our people, or all of us, all right, if we were raised according to our customs and our laws, man. All right. If our households were structured as the Lord set them up, all right, to where, all right, we would be functioning within our own household economies with efficiency, man. All right. So without further ado, man, Lord's will, I'm gonna go into some precepts. I'm gonna go into a couple of articles, Chat GPT, and Lord's will, it really paints a picture of how things were in the ancient world, and really give an understanding of the wisdom behind why the Lord had things set up the way that He had them set up. All right, in comparison to this tacky ass mess that's going on in America, man. So without further ado, Jeremiah 6:16, thus saith the Lord Yahweh, stand ye in the ways and see and ask for the old paths, where's the good way, and walk therein, and ye shall find rest for your souls. But they said, we will not walk therein, and that's right, man. So we're supposed to be seeking the old paths, all right? Now, there's things within our laws that we can't do, all right, that we don't institute, or as far as, being able to apply it. For example, the scripture says that if there's an alphabet person, you see them, you're supposed to stone them. Well, within this society, we don't do that. But that doesn't mean that we don't have the mind of Yahweh Shai, Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai. And that doesn't mean that we aren't going to speak on these different things and we have a disdain for it. Okay? Plain and simple. So this puts us in a different mind frame. And that's the main thing. All right, having our mind frame different, because the scripture says the Lord will give pastors according to His heart, which shall feed us with knowledge and understanding. So instead of our mind being of the West and how Esau's brought us up with his poison, now we're being transformed, being born again, and seeing the mind of the Lord and understanding the wisdom and why He set up things the way that they are, man. And as it says here, this is the book of Psalms 119 in verse Psalms 119 and 128. Therefore I esteem all thy precepts concerning all things to be right, and I hate every false way. Right. So the Lord's way is best. Our Lord is a power of knowledge, man. And for anybody to think that their way or Esau's way is better than how the Lord ordained and set up things, all right, or if you think that your way or Esau's way is way more efficient, all right, than the creator of all things, you're a fool. All right. And you have a lot of our people that are offended, all right, and ashamed of our laws and customs and so on and so forth. All right. And the Lord is going to be ashamed of them, man. Okay. Because that's silly to think that your way is better. Even if you don't always understand why the Lord did this and that and the third, there's a wisdom that you don't have that He has when He created everything that's beyond the wisdom that you think that you have. All right. And we're in full agreement with that. Okay, with the will of Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai. This is the book of Job, chapter 8 and verse 8. For I inquire, I pray thee of the former age, and prepare thyself to the search of their fathers. Right. So we're inquiring of the older age, man, the former age of our forefathers, the culture that we were raised up in the ancient world, and so on and so forth. And these things also help us understand the scriptures. All right. That's why you see so many different comparisons, all right, within our scriptures that are in relation to agriculture. All right. Because as we're going to read and some of this information here, I might as well just jump right into it. I had another precept, but I'm gonna just get to it. This is from the World of Children in Hebrew. All right, so this is from Bible Inter P dot Arizona.edu. Okay, by Christine Henriksen Garraway. All right, let's jump down to this paragraph to start. It says, A Child's Life. Lawrence Stagger's seminal article spurred an interest in the Israelite family in daily life. He noted that the Israelite family was focused on the extended family, the Bet Av, or house of the father, which would be Bayath Abba, all right, of the biblical text. Subsequent studies have estimated that upwards of 90% of Israelites lived in agricultural settlements, and that the Bayath Abba remained the core social structure from early Israel on through the fall of the monarchy, meaning the fall of our kings, right? So 90% of our people, all right, lived in agricultural settlements. So that means that they were tilling the land, taking care of the sheep, taking care of the flock, right, working on the land. Now that's a lot of work. Okay. That means that you got sheep to take care of. You get money from off of that, not just eating of the lambs, right? But from you had goats, all right, you had goat milk that it was producing. You had goat hair that was used that needed to be spun, that could be sold for this and that and the third. So there's a lot of moving different pieces, man. All right, that's if you had land, right? You had vineyards, you had different things to plant and everything like that. But even if you were not fortunate to have land, all right, you were maybe poor or you came down on hard times, all right, well, then you would oftentimes be a slave, all right, or a servant to another household, all right, where you would work on their land or you would work with their cattle, and so on and so forth, man. All right, so this was heavily ingrained, all right, within our culture and our society. So that means that when a child was being raised up, they were being taught to be as self sufficient as possible, to begin to work on the land and help out wherever they could. And this is why having many children was a blessing. All right, because you had many servants, which is how children were looked at as well. All right, they're like a glorified servant. All right, whether you were a noble, whether you were a common person, you worked as a servant in your father's household. All right. So instead of going off to school from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. and you learning all this madness, all right, because the scripture says, and train up a child in the way that he shall go, right? So in Esau's society, he's trained children to transition right into his workplace. Yeshaya had made that beautiful connection on the line. He was like, here it is. You go to school from 7 to 3, then you just trade that out for a 9 to 5. All right. You know, so Esau from an early age, he's ingrained people to go into the workforce. Well, our children and our culture, they weren't going to school from 9 to 5 or 7 to 3. No, they were learning at home. All right. And they were taking care of tasks. They were doing labor. They were doing work. As soon as they got done being weaned, then they would go right into learning how to do different tasks and benefiting the household. Children were an essential part. All right. And in addition to forwarding, all right, the household economy. All right. So they were raised up way more mature. All right. They were raised up having way more responsibilities. And we're going to read about these different comparisons to children in the ancient world compared to children in the Western society and in the chat GPT a little bit later on, Lord's will. All right. So it says children were born to parents and grew up in this social structure. This was their world, right? So let's grab a couple precepts just to highlight that point. This is the book of Galatians chapter 4 and verse 1, that children were servants, man. All right, Galatians 4 and 1. Now I say that the heir, as long as he is a child, differeth nothing from a servant, though he be Lord of all, right? So you might have an heir of a king, okay? So this is a noble, but it says what? He differeth nothing from a servant, though he be Lord of all. So he's going to get a great inheritance, all right? He's the son of a king, right? But yet he's still a servant under his father's household. So there's responsibilities, there's duties, there's tasks that he's doing on a daily basis. Not like in this society, a child goes to school for 8 hours, right? Then they come on and play video games all day, okay? Or they're doing whatever the hell they may do that's not profitable. Nah, the children were profiting the household, you know? Like you got people, they'll boast and be like, yeah, man, I've been working since I was 16. Back in the ancient world, like children, they started working, to a certain capacity, man, when they was like 5, 6 years old, you know? And people be like, damn, like, nah, they were actually putting to work, going to work 5, 6 years old. Even in slavery. All right, now this was Esau just being an asshole, okay? But you could see pictures of young children, Jakes, picking cotton, at 4 years old, 3 years old. Like, actually, as soon as they were able to. But just to pull in the point, that there was a completely different mentality, man. All right. Children weren't expected to stay there and be dependent until they were 16. All right. Nah, as soon as they were able to be understand tasks and responsibilities and can do certain things, all right, you know what it means when I say go do this and go do that, and you can go do it and you're seeing your mother doing it, all right, and you get to the point once you're weaned, you're following your father and you're seeing how to do everything. By the time that you 5, 6 years old, you can do certain things, man. Okay. And this was the culture. All right. And by the time that a child, and we're going to get the timelines, but by the time a young man was 13, 13 years old, he was able to step in the place of his father and take care of all the responsibilities, man. Okay. Because he's been there for years, seeing his father do every single thing. So if his father got sick or whatever the case may be, he was able to step in and do all of that, man. All right. And even with a young woman, man, by the time that she was 13, she was able to take care of a household, man. Okay, she was able to take care of a household, as we're going to read in the different information, man. She was able to make a whole meal, all right, for an entire household. I'm talking about start to finish. I ain't talking about that microwave stuff, you know. And we got 8 of our relatives coming in town, and it's 6 of us at the crib. All right, I want you to make dinner for them on this day. She would know to go to the marketplace, grab all the ingredients that she needed. All right. She would cut up all the food, make it prepared from scratch, and she knew how to do all of that, on her own. Okay. She was instructed in that. So children were brought up to be way more mature than us in this society, all right, being raised, under Esau Edom, which he just is forwarding us into being a servant in these 9 to 5 jobs. All right. So completely different mentality, right? So Galatians 4:1, now I say that the heir, as long as he's a child, differeth nothing from a servant, though he be Lord of all, but is under tutors and governors until the time appointed of the father, right? So if he was a noble, all right, instead of just being trained in the craft of his father, because that's how it was set up. See, children in this age, it's like, well, what do you want to do when you grow up? Well, I think I want to do this. I think I want to do that. In the ancient world, you're doing what your father's doing. Okay. Your father's a fisherman. You're a fisherman. As a matter of fact, we got 2 examples in one chapter. All right. And this was the norm, and so much emphasis is put on emotions and how you feel and this and that and the third. That's something that's of the West. All right. That's here. All right. Getting caught up. Well, I want to be a doctor, and then and I want to do this, and I want to be a cook. It was like you went in the path of your fathers, man. That's why even you have certain family last names that might be Smith or Blacksmith, right? They have that name because that family line, those sons were known to be the blacksmiths. All right. It's just a generation of people that are blacksmiths or the potters, and that will have different roles within that community, right? But real quick, this is the book of Matthew, chapter 4, just to highlight that point. Matthew chapter 4 and verse 18. It says, "And Yahushua, walking by the Sea of Galilee, saw 2 brethren, Simon called Peter and Andrew his brother, casting a net into the sea, for they were fishers." Right? So 2 brothers, all right, that are fishermen. Okay? So their father was a fisher, and both of them are out fishing as well. Okay? So they wasn't going off to college and, yeah, man, I think I want to be an engineer. And the other brother, like, yeah, man, you think about that, man, I think I just want to be a chef. It didn't work like that. Nah, you were just ingrained into going into whatever your father did. All right. And you were skilled at that. You know, you were at least minimum will have the skill that your father, was brought you up and raised in, because this is what you were being taught. All right. All the way up. Right. And he said unto them, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." And they straightway left their nets and followed him. And going on from thence, he saw other 2 brethren, James, the son of Zebedee, and John, his brother, in a ship with Zebedee, their father, mending their nets, and he called them, right? So the father, all right, and his sons, he raised them all to also be fishermen. So they were growing up and they were assisting, all right, their father in that craft, and continue to forward that. All right. So this is how our societies, how our culture, all right, how we operated, in the ancient world, man. Now you got colleges, now you got this and that and the third, and it's all a flow, a stream of people, all right, into Esau's workplace and slavery. All right. So you're being instructed in the things that you need to know to go be a slave for him. All right, for the most part, man. All right. So that was it in that Galatians. Read that Matthew. This is Lamentations 3 and 27. It is good for a man that he bear the yoke in his youth, right? So just bringing this out because a yoke is something that's used for oxen, right? And it symbolizes labor in the spiritual sense. It symbolizes discipline, right? But just to bring out the point that children in their youth, all right, they were under the yoke, okay? They were under labor, right? This is the book of Sirach chapter 30, and I'll start at verse 8. It says, "And horse not broken becometh headstrong, a child left to himself will be willful. Conquer thy child, and he shall make thee afraid. Play with him, and he will bring thee to heaviness. Laugh not with him, lest thou have sorrow with him, and lest thou gnash thy teeth in the end. Give him no liberty in his youth, and wink not at his follies. Bow down his neck while he is young, okay, and beat him on the sides while he is a child." Right? Discipline, man. Had to discipline your children, okay? Women, men, didn't matter. Everybody was getting disciplined, okay? Everybody was being instructed, all right, and it was getting, it was getting corrected, man. All right. It says in the book of Proverbs, man, it says how's it worded, man? It's a couple precepts, man, but it says, "Spare not the rod, you know, and be not sorrowful for every cry." You know what I'm saying? It says, "Folly is bound in the heart of a child, but the rod of correction shall drive it away." All right, so children were disciplined early and often. All right, until they got into that system of just doing what needs to get done. Here it is. The children all focus on their feelings and they feel like this and feel like that. No, they get their ass whooped, and you're gonna do what was said. Okay, and that's just how it was. All right, and continuing doing that, they would get in line to be able to be an asset to the household. All right, to be able to take care of tasks and to where you can rely on them to do certain things within the household, man. All right, so it says, "Bow down his neck while he is young, and beat him on the sides while he is a child, lest he wax stubborn and be disobedient unto thee, and so bring sorrow to thine heart. Chastise thy son and hold him to labor, lest his lewd behavior be an offense unto thee." Right. So a lot of children in this society, they're very idle. All right. They're very idle, man. Okay. In the ancient world, man, there wasn't all this idleness that a lot of children have in this society, man, to where they're getting into all types of madness, and they don't have discipline. Once again, man, a lot of people don't even start working, until they 18, certain cases 16. In the ancient world, you was already working at an early age, man. All right, you already had tasks and responsibilities that you were being groomed in that you had to take care of. You know, if you wasn't hands on with the work, well, you was right there with your father, or right there, with the mother, you know, assisting them in their work. Okay, you know. So that's it in that. So let's go back to this article, right? So the desired child. It says we know from biblical texts. Let me just make sure. Okay, yep. So we know from biblical texts that children were much desired. All right, and when you have an efficient system, okay, it's a blessing to have 8, 9, 10 children, man. All right. After they've been weaned, that's 8 and 9, 10 servants that you're having forwarding your enterprise within your household, man. All right. That's more people tending to the flock. That's more people tilling the ground. Okay. You know, you got daughters that are grinding at the mill. They're making more. She's learning how to make garments and different things like that. They would sell those garments. They would use them for the household and everything like that. Like there was an economy. Each household worked as an economy. Okay. So this is why it was a part of why it was a blessing to have many children. But in this society, all right, because there's not structure in the household, there's not enough discipline. They done took the fathers out. All right, women don't know how to be women. They haven't seen these things. They don't know what's going on. They don't know their purpose. All right, you know. So all this disruption is happening in the household to where you hear about somebody having 8 children. It's like, damn, man, that's crazy. It's like, shit, how many? How you do that? You know? Well, there was a lot more efficiency when the household was being ran as the scriptures tell us to run it, to where it is a blessing. Yeah, I got 8 children. Woo, 8 children, man, that's a blessing, man. I know they helping out with this and that and the third. That was a big part. All right. But in this society, it's like you just think chaos. Children running around, snacks all on the ground, kids just playing, ain't nobody serving. All right. And then you got one or two people doing everything. The parents, like, nah. Children were meant to be get to a point to being efficient enough to where you ain't just scrambling, running around, head all over the place, and whatever the case it may be. It was like, nah, there was order. All right, order that was being done. But anyways, it says, um, it says in the social structure that understood a female's life cycle as daughter, wife, and mother, the social role of a woman was centered on the domicile and ensuring its continuity. Right, the domicile meaning at home. Okay, you know, So, like I use the analogy with the CEO. All right, you have a CEO of a company, then you have the GM. The CEO sets the standards, all right, the direction that he wants the company to go in, okay, and so on and so forth, right? He may implement certain systems or give certain systems, and then he expects the general manager to go and execute that, all right, you know, to go and make those things happen and forward it, okay? So then he comes and he checks out what's going on and sees. So when things aren't out of order, then he's gonna go and examine. Like, okay, hold on. He's talking to the GM. Why is this out of order? Why is that happening? So on and so forth. All right, and they're gonna communicate and figure out, like, why isn't the vision of the CEO being forwarded in this company? And he's gonna go to the GM to do that. And woman, all right, women would embrace that role and took pleasure and looked at that as their success. See, in this society, their career goals, like all their career goals and aspirations, all right, in the ancient world, all that was replaced with the striving for a successful home, a household, all right, taking delight in all right, how efficient your household is running, okay, the systems that you have in place, right? The cleanliness of the house, how the food is being made, and and everything like that, how efficient you can make it. That was the manager. And women, they want to be this boss woman and so on and so forth, right? So then they go into the workplace, they put in all that time and effort, into that. But then when it comes down to being at home, all right, they don't want to forward or put that much energy into the forwarding of their own economy, which is their household economy, and take pride in that. They take more pride in their career in serving Esau Edom's economy as opposed to serving their own household and the economy underneath their man. All right. So women are capable. Okay. They have a beautiful role. They are capable, but all that energy is being directed into Esau Edom's madness and his school system and so on and so forth. So in the kingdom, all right, like it was in the ancient world, but on a whole nother level in the kingdom, all right, women are going to be forwarding, all right, the vision of the man. Okay. And they're going to embrace and enjoy that and take delight. And they're going to look at that as success, you know? So the whole mind frame is going to shift, man. All right. It's going to completely shift. But it says, yep. So let's grab a couple precepts real quick before we go back. Now, this is the book of, let's get the ordering of the house. This is, let me pull it up. My phone real quick. I just got the wrong precept, but nah, it's right here. All right, this is the book of Sirach, chapter 26 and verse, I'll start at 13. The grace of a wife delighteth her husband, and her discretion will fatten his bones. A silent and loving woman is a gift of the Lord, and there is nothing so much worth as a mind well instructed. A shamefaced and faithful woman, right? Because a woman is supposed to be able to take that, criticism or that instruction, first and foremost, that started with her father, or the instructions of her mother, and then from them to her husband. And that's another thing. See, if a woman is being raised, all right, is being raised, all right, receiving instructions from the mother, instructions from the father, right? When it comes down to another man giving her instructions, she understands that, okay, or supposed to, all right, because she's been in that system since birth. She's seen her mother being submissive to the father, and when he said certain things, that she was submissive to it and everything like that and so on and so forth. So then when she gets transferred over to a man, it was expected to flow, right? She was expected to take those same, that same discipline that she had with her father and have that same discipline to her husband under his rule and under his subjection, right? It says, a shamefaced and faithful woman is a double grace, and her continent mind cannot be valued, right? A woman that can check herself, check her emotions, all right? Keep her mind within boundaries, like, no, let me move like this, let me operate like that. Like, no, my husband, he won't like that. Nah, he don't like that. That thinks and reasons in that type of way. Nah, that's out of line. Let me make sure, she's staying within a certain code of conduct. And once again, see, women go on the job and they'll stay in a certain code of conduct. They'll stay professional, all right? Even if they feel a certain type of way, you know, man, I got to keep this job. So let me act professional. I know he ain't say talking crazy to me and this and that and the third. They'll go through certain things and suffer certain things and still be polite. All right, still be respectful. You know what I'm saying? But then when it comes down to all right, her master at home, okay, her Lord, as our foremothers considered their husbands, understanding that the husband had rule over them. All right. But when it comes down to that, all that goes out the window. There's a lack of respect, and it's not an understanding of the order and the authority that the man has over that. And that's attributed to Esau Edom. Okay. Because look at what Esau Edom did, man, through the feminist movement. Okay. He said that he taught women that being under a man is oppressive. All right. That listening to him, being obedient, and to him is crazy, cooking and cleaning and this and that and the third, and just being a housewife. Like he said that was horrible. All right, he told you that that wasn't good. That's a terrible experience, right? So he told you being under the rule of a man at home, forwarding your own economy that was going to benefit you and your household was bad. But then he told you to go do that for him is okay. You know what? Don't be under his subjection. Nah, be under mine at the job. You know, be under my now work for me. That's not oppressive. Girl, you independent. You getting your own and this and that and the third and so on and so forth. So you went from being a slave, all right, you know, or you went from being a servant, okay, to your household that's going to forward you and your children for their benefit, all right. You're pretty much your own company to going to work for this man's company, all right. And he told you that's not oppression, and they bit it. They ate it up. Like, yeah, we got jobs now. We working. Hold on, you was working at home. You had a job, maintaining a house. All right, taking care of these different things. Okay, now your job is for him, and these women is burnt out. Okay, woman is burnt out, man. All right, but anyways, it says, verse 16, as the sun when it ariseth in the high heaven, so is the beauty of a good wife in the ordering of her house. And this is what women took pride in, man. How she orders her house. All right. She took pride in preparing the meals, right? She took pride in, how she, ordered everything, man. All right. Making sure the children were fine and this and that and the third. She took pride in actually teaching, instructing her daughters or, the son to a certain age and everything like that, man, teaching him and being hands on with her. And this is what women took pride in. This was a fulfillment. All right. And women naturally have this, but Esau's taught them to rebel. Okay. You have women that they don't even think about marriage. All right. Until they're in their late 20s. Then they start panicking when they get to their 30s. All right. Because their biological clock is winding down and they get that urge and they want to finally settle down. But here it is. You haven't even learned how to be a wife. This whole time you were taught to go to college and do all these different things. You never put time and effort into learning how to be a wife. You haven't seen a woman serve a man. All right. You haven't learned these different things, man. Okay. So then by the time they want to settle down, they disrespectful. Oh, I ain't doing this. Now doing certain things. It's like what? It's like, aren't you a woman? Nah, I ain't doing that and this and that and the third. And then nobody want them. Okay? Nobody want the attitude. Nobody want all that because you haven't been trained to be a wife. Esau purposely is orchestrated this system to be that way, man. All right. It says, that's it in that. So let's grab this in the book of Titus. Titus chapter 2 and verse 3. It says, the aged woman likewise that they be in behavior as becometh holiness, not false accusers, not giving to much wine, teachers of good things, that they may teach the young women to be sober, to love their husbands, to love their children, right? So this is what the women are supposed to be teaching the younger woman, all right? It says to be discreet, chaste, keepers at home, good, obedient to their own husbands, that the word of the Most High be not blasphemed, right? And we're going to look at a couple of other translations, man, just to hone in on it. Says, keepers at home, right? It says in the NLT, to live wisely and be pure, to work in their homes, right? So this is where a woman's work is supposed to be at, all right? You know, her work, her occupation, her job is supposed to be within the home, right? And you got, once again, you got women that want to get their own businesses and this and that and the third. Well, this is the most beautiful business that you can have, all right? Managing a household, all right? Raising the children, providing, okay? Doing all these different things, man. But Esau has warped their minds into making that look oppressive, and they don't want no parts of it in a lot of cases, right? It says in the Amplified to be sensible, pure makers of a home. And we're going to hone in on this. Makers of a homemaker, where the Most High is honored, good nature, being subject to their own husbands, so that the word of the Most High will not be dishonored. All right, even in the NKJV, to be discreet, chaste, homemakers. All right, homemakers. Okay, so I typed in, I looked up a few different things and I came across this article, all right, from this woman, Janet Quinlan, coaching woman, marriage, motherhood, and home management. I just want to, go through this a little bit just to pull out different points and to kind of highlight the mentality. Now, this is a woman in this society, but just to highlight the mentality of a woman, of what it should be. All right, I'll put it like that, and how women were raised up more so in this mentality, all right, in the ancient world, man. So it says, what is a homemaker and why it matters, right? So it says, when I was a young girl, I always wanted to be a wife and mother. It took me a while to answer the question, what is a homemaker and am I one, right? And once again, she's a little bit older. So back then when she was growing up, all right, that was still the mentality. But in today's age, women they aren't even thinking about trying to be a wife or a mother. They're thinking about their career and so on and so forth. A lot of women don't value that. Okay. Or they look at it as being oppressive. All right. Now women are talking about, oh, she's a pick me, and derogatory terms of women that are being in order. All right. And that have a desire to actually be a woman. Okay, right? It says somewhere in the 70s, the word homemaker became a derogatory label. It had the connotation that you had less worth as a woman because you only took care of a house and kids without getting paid. Your husband had the easy ride, leaving you every day for a fancy schmancy job while you were home with curlers in your hair, crumbs all over the floor, and mounds of laundry burying you, right? And this is a result of bad management, okay? All right. This is a result of a woman that, if all this is happening, you haven't managed the house right. You haven't ordered your house in order to have a system to where it ain't crumbs all over the floor, where it ain't mounds of laundry always burying you, right? Where I don't know why you got the curlers in your hair all the time. All right. But this is a thing that women aren't taught. All right. You're supposed to have management within your household. You're supposed to set up systems in your household. Okay. That's going to help to be efficient. All right. And when the man, he should come home to seeing efficiency, not chaos, right? And women took pride in providing that efficiency, okay? But that's not the case, and this is being done once again, orchestrated by Esau Edom, right? So it says, I'm gonna jump down. It says, what is a homemaker? I've been a stay-at-home mom, a homeschooling mom, a work outside the home mom, a teacher, and a business owner with a very successful online business. But in every season of my life, I've been a homemaker. As homemakers, we tap into our unique natural tendencies to create a home environment that is loving, nurturing, supportive, and educational. And when you read the scriptures and you read about wisdom, it compares wisdom into a mother, or into a woman, right? Because a woman is supposed to be loving, she's supposed to be nurturing, she's supposed to be supportive, right? In the book of Sirach, it talks about how she's a comfort in cares and grief, right? You know, and all these different nurturing aspects. That's why wisdom is compared to that, because it's a nurturer, right? And these are traits that a woman has to a degree naturally, but these are things that need to be seen and taught, all right, to flow into that, man. There'll be little glimpses of it and so on and so forth, but a lot of this, All right, just like hey, coming into this faith, we had to learn how to be men. All right, women have to learn how to be women. All right, this is just crazy. The stuff that the mentality of our women out here is just through. All right. But it says, as women, even as individually different from each other as we are, we have the same heart, eyes that see needs, and the desire to solve problems and serve that. Saint Pope John Paul II referred to as the feminine genius, right? And that whole femininity, once again, it was set up to destroy the household, bring rebellion to the men, all right, take women out of order. It says we identify needs and seek to solve problems. We thrive when we make a sincere gift of self to others, right? And women should, all right, enjoy providing and raising children in the household and so on and so forth, man. All right, that's why they have what they get baby fever. These are things that the Lord naturally put in them that Esau has taught them to rebel against. Okay, you know, and he's put through his social media, through the television. He told you that going to college and waiting until you're 40 to settle down, that's happiness. But then all these women that do that are depressed. All right. And they've been with all these men and they've just been destroyed. Okay. They've destroyed themselves, man. But he tells you that's happiness. But now people are realizing, like, nah, that ain't where it's at. What the Lord set up, that's the best way. Right. But it says, so to speak about homemaking as a really long list of tasks is to miss the point completely of what we do. We create happy homes, and when you see that, you notice that naturally women, they're good at specific jobs, man. Okay, they're really good when they're the receptionist, when she's able to take care of certain tasks and you know filter certain things before it gets to the manager or whatever the case may be, man. You know, or what adding a certain touch to decoration and everything like that, or ordering certain things, and you know, a man could bring in the different resources, and then they would be able to distribute it out. You know what I'm saying? They'll be able to organize certain things. That's what they specialize in, man. There's certain things that they actually enjoy and love to do, right? So that energy is supposed to be once again within the household. They'll go and do that for their nine to five job. All right. So all Esau did was like, look, instead of you working for your man, all right, and benefiting your household, we're gonna destroy the household and you're gonna work for me. And I'm gonna tax your ass. All right. you know, that's what he did. So it says, we create happy homes, life-giving homes that children don't want to sell. All right. So there are three parts of creating a home that are important. All right. Our mindset. What do our children see in what we say, the way we say it, and how we approach the care of the home? And once again, as women were being raised up at an early age in the ancient world, they were seeing, all right, how the mother talks to the husband, right? You know, how how she responds to if he might be in a bad mood or this and that and the third, right? She was raised seeing these different things, all right? She was being taught how and being instructed on how to respond and so on and so forth. That doesn't happen in this society, man. All right, and this is a major issue. All right, the attitude of our women is a major issue, man. That proud, haughty, nobody can tell me what to do, or I only do this under these circumstances, and you know, well, nah, that's too far. I'll do this and I'll do like all that attitude to, that is a major issue. All right. That insubordination, that is a major issue, right? So let's read this. Sirach chapter 36 and 23. It says, 22, the beauty of a woman cheereth the countenance, and a man loveth nothing better. If there be kindness, meekness, and comfort in her tongue, then is not her husband like other men. And this is how a woman is supposed to be. All right. She's supposed to be comforting. She's supposed to be feminine, right? Kindness in her tongue, meekness. She's supposed to be encouraging. She's supposed to be comforting, right? These women aren't like that, okay? This is how majority of women are. This is the book of Sirach, chapter 25. They loud. They, always got something to say, you know. It's just a hot mess. Sirach 25 and 22. It says, a woman, if she maintain her husband, is full of anger, impudence, and much reproach. All right, talking trash. Right? A wicked woman abateth the courage. Right? Maketh the heavy countenance and a wounded heart. Right? She'll say certain shit, talk trash, you know. And women, they'll say things that, a man might brush off, but he'll never forget. Okay? you know? and she just said it in her anger or whatever the case may be. That's how a lot of women are, man. But once again, a woman that has a continent mind, she would check herself. She would watch what she's saying. She understands the authority that she's under. She wouldn't dare say certain things, and whatever the case may be, they get familiar. They get too comfortable. They get to talking trash. You know, this is what happens, man. All right. But once again, in the ancient world, man, women were raised differently. Now, this is written, so this was happening to a degree back then. You had wicked women, but for sisters that are coming back to knowing who they are and everything like that, they should strive to have these certain characteristics that the Lord says is valuable, man. All right, and should recognize when they're doing these certain things, man. A wicked woman abateth the courage, maketh an heavy countenance and a wounded heart. A woman that will not comfort her husband in distress maketh weak hands and feeble knees. All right, of the woman came the beginning of sin, and through her we all die. Give the water no passage, neither a wicked woman liberty to gad abroad. Right, so through her we've died. All right, we die, man. All right, you go back to the garden through Eve and so on and so forth, man. All right. And women don't even, they don't even consider, you know, they don't even consider that, man. All right. Going back to Eve and, having any responsibility to like, dang, man, we in this situation because, I was listening to the serpent, and you got women that are still listening to the serpent now. Okay. Well, you're going to have to put off the ways and the mentality of the serpent. The different things that, been speaking about through the spirit is the way of the serpent and what he's instructed and indoctrinated you in. All right. But now you have to separate, become a new creature, be transformed by the renewing of your mind, as we all do, men and women. All right. And you got to put away those indoctrinations, man. You have to put away those mind frames. You got to put away all that rebellion, all right, towards the Lord, man. All right. In the way that you think, reason, operate, all of that, man. Give the water no passage, neither a wicked woman liberty to gad abroad. Right. You have to learn how to be a woman according to what the scripture says, man. All right. If she go not as thou wouldest have her, cut her off from thy flesh and give her a bill of divorce and let her go. Right. Let's run this back into G&T. Sirach 25 in verse I'm gonna start at verse 13. It says advice about women in the G&T. No wound is as serious as wounded love. No troubles are as serious as the troubles that women cause. No sufferings are worse than the sufferings caused by people who hate you. No revenge is worse than the revenge taken by an enemy. No poison is deadlier than the poison of a snake. And no anger is deadlier than the anger of a woman. And you read about, or you hear about majority, man, the different things that women take men through, and they just are unapologetic about it, man. There's women, they'll know that the child, that they have with a man isn't his. The dude will find out 18 years later. Then she want to cry or, about it and this and that. And the third whole time she knew, you know, or she'll point the finger. Woman will go, they'll go commit adultery, blame it on you. All types of just wickedness, man. All right. That's why the scripture says from moth cometh from a garment cometh moth, and from wickedness or from woman come wickedness, man. Okay. A lot of these dudes are in jail over what? A woman. All right, a wicked woman. Okay. You know, there's all types of madness, man. But anyways, it says, I would rather live in the same house with a lion or a dragon than with a bad wife. When a wife is in a bad mood, her expression changes until she looks like an angry bear, right? And that creates a horrible atmosphere at home to where most men, they're like, man, I ain't even trying to go home. All right, because of the atmosphere and the vibration that the woman is in, he's like, I don't even want to be home. I got to deal with this dragon, you know? But as men are, as when the transition has been happening over the years where men realize that damn I actually don't have to deal with this nigga. I can actually move on. All right, it was a mentality that men just had to suffer and deal with whatever woman had to deal with. Now men is like, nah, I'm straight. I'll pass. All right, I'll pass, man. I'll be good on my own. And you know men ain't trying to get married. All right, you know back then, it's like men are tired of these women, man. All right. But it says, because they're not wives, they're not comforting. All right. It's just a lose-lose in often instances, all right, for most men. All right. The only thing he might get is some funky box. Okay. You know, but then he's dealing with the headache, the troubles, and the shit talking and so on and so forth, man. Don't listen, backbiting. It's like niggas don't want Jake don't want to deal with that no more, man. All right, Jake is like, I'm cool, man. I'll go deal with the heathen woman. You know, Jake is going to the Edomite woman. You know what I'm saying? Jake going overseas to get a woman. You know, Jake is like, a woman get out of line. All right, I'm moving on. They ain't suffering certain things, but it's a certain vibration that's going out, man. All right, but it says, I would rather live in the same house with a lion or a dragon than with a bad wife. When a wife is in a bad mood, her expression changes until she looks like an angry bear. Her husband has to go and eat with the neighbors where he can't hold back his bitter sighs. Compared with the troubles caused by a woman, any other trouble looks small. May such woman suffer the fate of sinners. And that's right, these wicked women, all right, they're going to suffer, man. All right, they're going to suffer in these calamities, these plagues. They're going to get judged, man. All right. Majority of the people that's gonna get destroyed is gonna be women, just off of the fact that women outnumber men. Okay, so it's gonna be horrible out here, man. All right, they're not gonna escape. All right, they're wicked. They're not gonna escape. All the sinners of my people, whether man or woman, shall die by the sword, which say that evil shall not overtake nor prevent us, man. All right, but it says a quiet man living with a nagging wife is like an old man climbing up a sandy hill. Never lose your head over a woman's beauty, and don't try to win a woman because she is wealthy. When a man is supported by his wife, there is sure to be anger, arrogance, and humiliation. All right. And that's why, you don't want to put yourself in a position, to the best of your ability, all right, in a position to where you have a woman that can maintain you, all right, she's taking care of you, this and that and the third. Now you want to have your own, okay? Because then she get emotional, she this and that and the third. You want to be in a position to where you could bounce, okay? You know, to where she can't control you or whatever, because she's going, like it says here, she's going to be full of anger, she's going to be full of arrogance, she's going to humiliate you, she's going to talk trash and this and that and the third. But you know but the house in her name, so you can't leave. Or she call the cops and get you out. Like Jake be going through all types of, you hear about Jake in the world, man. And when a woman flipped the switch and she feel like she got control, and she called the cops and this and that and the third, man. That's why the scriptures put us on game to be aware of all these different things, man. All right. It says a bad wife will make her husband gloomy and depressed and break his heart. Show me a timid man who can never make up his mind, and I will show you a wife who doesn't make her husband happy. Sin began with a woman, and we must all die because of her. Don't let a bad wife have her way any more than you would allow water to leak from your cistern, right? So not allowing a woman to control and manipulate you, man. All right. If she won't do as you tell her, divorce her. All right. So just wanted to go into that and that GNT, man. So this is how a lot of women are, man. All right, carrying all these traits, and that's the complete opposite of what we read in that Sirach 25. All right, or that Sirach 36 and 23. If there be kindness, meekness, and comfort in her tongue, then is not her husband like other men, right? You know? And I'll read the next verse. He that getteth a wife beginneth a possession, a help like unto himself, and a pillar of rest. So this is what a woman is supposed to be: a pillar of rest, a comfort, a helpmeet. All right, not a burden, not someone that's nagging all the time. A comfort. All right, and ultimately, that's why, hey, look, we get our comfort from the scriptures, man. Okay, because with her, there is no sorrow, there is no grief. Okay, it's a comfortable environment, man. All right, so let's go back to this article. So it says, do we struggle with our attitude? Are we annoyed? Let me see. Okay, it says our mindset, attitude. What do our children see in what we say, the way we say it, and how we approach the care of the home? Do we see that we have the unique ability to set the tone? Do we see homemaking as a privilege to cooperate with the Most High to directly affect the lives of his children? Right, and women don't have this mentality in most cases. Is homemaking a path to our own holiness through challenging days requiring the mastering of virtues that don't come naturally to us? All right, so these things have to be worked on, man. All right. Do we find joy in serving the others in our home, setting the tone for service to one another in the family, and saying no to our own selfishness? Are we cheerful, creating a happy, joyful home? And this is the attitude of a woman being raised in the ancient world, man. All right, if her mother was instructing her properly, if her father was, providing, the necessary discipline and so on and so forth, man, they would look to do these things, man. All right. It says, do we struggle with our attitude? Are we annoyed that we have to do everything when in fact we haven't taken the time to teach children how to begin to care for themselves in their home? So a lot of women would complain about, I got this and that going on and so on and so forth, and you got children and you haven't instructed them to do anything. Okay, you haven't taken the time to teach them, all right, to guide them in the proper way, right? And this is what our mothers, all right, and that's why going back to, hearing, going back to comparing wisdom into a woman, all right, our mothers would instruct, their daughters, all right, and how to operate, man, okay, and how to be efficient to help with these different tasks and so on and so forth, so that they aren't doing all of that on their own. You were, as a child, you were expected to eventually contribute to the household, okay? You were brought under the yoke and you were expected to be an essential part of contributing to the household. You was not finna just be playing the game all day. You wasn't just finna be sitting on your ass, or in this society, they on their phone and X, Y, and Z, and you were gonna contribute to this household to whatever capacity, man. All right, until you were out and contributing to another household, or if you were a son, until you build your own household, man. It says, have we communicated with our husbands? Let me see. All right. Yep, it says, not complain to them about tasks that can be shared or help you may need. Right. And proper communication, man. All right. Women just be flipping out the mouth and this and that and the third. It's like, hold on. Before you even ask anything, you need to fix your tone. All right. Need to calm your ass down. All right. And you need to come with respect, or this conversation ain't even going nowhere. All right. I ain't hearing nothing, you know. But once again, um, etiquette that was being taught in the household. All right. How to ask. There's a way to ask certain things. There's a way to approach, just like with a king, man. You wouldn't just flip off at the king. Nah, it was a certain way you had to approach him, man. Okay. It was a certain way that you had to speak. And literally with a king, a woman, she had to be summoned. Okay. She had to be summoned to speak to the king and so on and so forth. But you get the idea. All right. It says, do our children see a crabby, angry mom who complains about the task of the home? And that just sounds like the nigga woman in the hood. Crabby, angry all the time. Nobody want to be around that. All right. And constantly going home to that in that atmosphere. All right. That's not a woman. That's a homemaker creating an atmosphere where people actually want to come home. All right. You got children. They don't even want to come home. Okay. Because mama got an attitude. You know what I'm saying? The daddy, he always hearing it. So he just depleted. You know, he's stuck. All right, his courage is abated. You know what I'm saying? So women don't take on the don't understand the value. All right, and then being able to create an atmosphere for the home by those different intangible things, man, by how they speak. All right, through taking care of tasks and responsibilities and so on and so forth. And our women are going to get back to that. Okay, they're going to get back to that, man. All right. Do our children see a crabby, angry mom who complains about the task of the home? Scriptures talk about that in the book of Proverbs, man. A nagging woman, all right, a woman that's full of contention. You know how you try to escape her, and you would rather dwell with a lion and a dragon or in the wilderness. You know what I'm saying? Than a woman that's always complaining, always nagging, always got this and that to say. It's like, oh my goodness. All right. The scriptures talk about that type of woman, man. How you want to escape her. Okay. Says, do they see a mom who, for whatever reason, doesn't take care of the home? Are we overwhelmed and therefore frozen in indecision? Have we been taught how to keep a home and set the tone? Do we waste time on the phone, social media, or our own interests and put homemaking last on the priority list of the day? Right. So women don't even consider these different things. Okay. All right. They don't consider what type of tone are they creating in the household. All right. Or they're caught up with worrying about what the man has to do. And that, a lot of emphasis has just been put on what a man is supposed to do, where women don't even know how to be wives. 35 years old. All right, I'm ready to settle down. And hold on, you need at least you way behind. You need 10 years of training on how to be a wife before you can even be a good wife. All right? Because once again, children, the daughters, they were being trained from, from the time that they were, weaned and everything like that. They were being trained on how to prepare, how to take care of a household. All right. So they had, let's say 5 years old, or after they were done being weaned, 3 4 years old, they're taking on little responsibilities. All right, making the bed and this and that and the third, and helping out mom with X, Y, and Z. So let's say 4 years old, all the way to the time that they're 12 13, right? They've went through extensive training on these different things, man. All right. you know So they had, let's say, 8 7 8 years of straight training on being a wife. All right, from seeing it with her mother, on being a mother. You know what I'm saying? All right, on taking care of tasks and duties. Your ass is 35, don't know how to do none of that. You need another 8 years of training. All right. So them women be behind the ball and just think that they can just snap their finger. All right, I'm ready to be a wife. It's like, nah, you don't even know what that means. Okay. So a lot of women, that sisters that may be listening, you know, you need to be reading articles like this. Okay. You need to be learning how to, what does it mean to be a wife? All right. What does it mean to take care of a household? How can I order my house, and set up a better structure within my household and so on and so forth to bring more of a peace and a calm atmosphere for when my husband gets home and so on and so forth. These are the things that you should be thinking about because you haven't been taught these things. Okay. So it says the mood of the home. All right. Yeah, I ain't gonna read all this. That's pretty. It says the decor. Make sure your home decor is clean, minimum, well maintained, and serves the family, not source of clutter or stress. Cooking and cleaning of homemaking. You can see that I put the intangible aspects of homemaking first in this post. In many ways, they are more important. Maybe you came from a home or had friends who had homes that were perfectly clean. Right. But cold and stressful with an air of anger. So you got that. You got women that know how to do certain tasks, you know, but she just cannot stop running her mouth or talking trash, but she'll make sure the house is clean. Okay. you know, you know, but you don't even want to go. All right. Because the atmosphere is terrible. All right. So it says maybe you came from a home or had friends who had homes that were perfectly clean, but cold and stressful with an air of anger, unhappiness, or disrespect. Or maybe your home was neat as a pin, but there was happiness and respect in the air. The tone of the home is critical, right? And women play a big part in the tone of the home. Okay, the CEO, he'll set the expectation, but it's up to the general manager, all right, to really forward that within the house. All right, because the CEO is taking care of other business or this and that and the third, or you know, making sure everything is there that the business could still be in existence. Okay, you know, but then the general manager is responsible for forwarding the vision of the CEO. All right, of the expectations, man. Okay, so it's a what's the word for it, man? I can't even think of the word for it, but it's that type of relationship, man. Okay, to a degree. All right. On the other hand, it is important to strive to have a clean, well-ordered home without the clutter and chaos that stirs up negativity and stress. Cleaning. Do we have a daily, weekly, monthly, and yearly cleaning schedule set up for our home? And do we actually implement it? Right. A lot of women, they just doing stuff on the fly. All right. There's not really structure. Right. And a woman should have a mind, which is this is all tying in, going back to the Sirach that we're going to read one more time, man. All right. About having it well ordered. This is what women took pride in doing. All right. Took pride in actually, organizing these different things, man. All right. Few people jump out of bed saying, Yippee, I get to clean the bathrooms today, but the bathrooms need to be clean. They are a small part of the equation to a happy home, and we can't minimize the importance of a cleaning schedule. A good cleaning schedule will require us to clean about 15 to 20 minutes a day if we are relatively consistent, not perfect, just attending to the schedule most days. So just seeing these as an example, she's thinking, what, structuring the house. All right, I need to structure cleaning. The CEO, he might say like, all right, I want to make sure that this is clean. When I get home, I want food. I make sure food is on the table. So he gives the general vision. Okay, cool. What system do I need to play to make sure that food is on the table? All right, well, damn, I need to make sure that I can take care of this at this point, that at that point. This is the window for me to prepare the food. All right, well, then on this day, I need to make sure I get groceries. All right, so then the food can be on the table on a daily, consistent basis. By the time, what time you get off work? You get off work at 5 o'clock. All right, well, if I implement this system, this will make sure that by 5 o'clock when he gets off work, the food is on the table. All right. Oh, cleaning. Okay, cool, cool. All right, I'm noticing that the laundry's getting out of hand. All right, well, maybe it's about time that I teach little whatever her name is to start folding the laundry. She can start helping with that. We'll pack up the laundry on. This is what a woman's mind is supposed to be. Um, uh, what's the word for it? She's supposed to be considering and thinking about these things and taking pride in the system that she's able to implement that accomplishes the vision of the CEO. So then when the CEO sees like, all right, nah, you did good. Nah, okay, nah, man, the food's ready on the table. Perfect. You know, this is happening, that's going on. Then he's like, nah, you done a good job. All right, you taking care of business, taking pride and dignity in that, man. Are we teaching our children to take care of themselves, making their bed, picking up their clothes, washing, folding, putting away their clothes, right? Cleaning up after themselves, cooking. Do we meal plan each week? So we're not scrambling to prepare something at the last minute or spend a lot of money on takeout. Have you learned the art of freezer meals? Do we make family meals a priority in our home? So these are just different things, examples that she's given about, being a homemaker and considering these different things. And once again, women were being raised seeing these things, all right, from an early age. Okay. So this is Sirach one more time, chapter 26 and 16. As the sun when it ariseth in the high heaven, so is the beauty of a good wife in the ordering of her house. All right. In the ordering of her house. Okay. So you got women on the comment board, they want to tell us what to do and what we breaking down wrong. And you need to worry about how to order a house. All right. You need to worry about creating a system so that your house is clean consistently or your children ain't all over the place. All right. You know, they're providing them better food, and you giving them the TV dinners. All right, you need to worry about ordering your crib. All right, that should be the focus of the woman. Okay, instead of getting on these comment boards talking shit to us. All right, so that's it. In that, I'm gonna go back to this article. So it says, in a social structure that understood a female's life cycle as a daughter, wife, and mother, the social role of a woman was centered on the domicile and ensuring its continuity. Yet barrenness or infertility were a reality for many ancient Israelite women. All right, so much so that it was considered a disability, right? And we got plenty of examples, man. And I won't read through all of them. Actually, I was gonna grab a couple, but I won't read through any of them. I'll quote them. You had Samuel's mother. All right, she was barren. She was being mocked, and she desired the child. You had Sarah. She was barren at one point, so she even had her handmaid. All right, had Abraham sleep with her handmaid to bring forth children. A completely different mentality than the woman of the West. But that shows you how forward they were and how important it was to forward the seed of that of the man, all right, to create a functioning household, bringing up children. The emphasis of that, man, women would flip out of their mind even the thought of their man sleeping with another woman. Okay, but our women in the ancient world, they understood the duty. They understood. Look, we're here to forward, the household. All right, I'm not bringing forth any children. We got to have children. Okay, this is a priority, man. All right, you know this is a priority, man. Okay, our forefather Jacob. All right, he had four women. He had Leah and Rachel. All right, I'll grab this real quick. Just this example at least. Okay. So yep, you had Hannah, all right. She was barren for a while, then the Lord, allowed opened up her womb, but she was weeping because she couldn't have children. All right, you had Sarai at the time. She was barren, so she gave Abraham the handmaid, Hagar, right? And then reading this is Genesis chapter 30, and I'm gonna start at verse 1. The sons of Jacob. All right, when Rachel saw that she bare Jacob no children, Rachel envied her sister. So Rachel was barren. All right, and she wanted to bring forth children, and Leah was bringing forth children. All right, the Lord opened her womb. All right, so where she could bring forth seed, and said unto Jacob, give me children or else I die. Right, so this shows you the emphasis, like, nah, I'm supposed to be having children, I'm not. All right, it's like a loss of a purpose. Okay, like, woman, it was like, look, this is my purpose. I'm supposed to bring forth children, and I'm not bringing forth children. I want to die. All right. Shows you the emphasis of that, man. But that was a fulfillment. Women having children was a major fulfillment. Now they're trying to get fulfilled in these careers. And then they're realizing they're not fulfilled when they get out of these careers or they finally get it and they're depressed. Because your fulfillment came in the successfulness of your household. All right. If you're in the right mentality, man. Okay. It says, and Jacob's anger was kindled against Rachel, and he said, am I in the Most High stead, who hath withheld from thee the fruit of the womb? And she said, behold, my maid Bilhah, go in unto her, and she shall bear upon my knees, that I may also have children by her. Right? So she gave her servant to Jacob, all right, because she was barren, to bring forth children, forwarding the household, forwarding the house economy. All right. You know? It says, it says, and she gave him Bilhah, her handmaid, to wife, and Jacob went in unto her. And Bilhah conceived and bare Jacob a son. And Rachel said, the Most High hath judged me, and hath also heard my voice, and hath given me a son. Therefore called she his name Dan. And Bilhah, Rachel's maid, conceived again, and bare Jacob a second son. And Rachel said, with great wrestlings have I wrestled with my sister, and I prevailed, and she called his name Naphtali. All right, so they were pretty much in competition trying to have the most children, man. All right. It says, when Leah saw that she had left bearing, all right, so the Lord had closed her womb for a time. She took Zilpah, her maid, and gave her Jacob to wife. So even she already had children, all right. To bring forth more children, she saw she couldn't have any more. She's like, well, damn, I ain't having no more children. Well, then I'm going to give you my handmaid so then you could bring more seed, all right, through her, right? What kind of woman is reasoning like that in these days, man? Okay. All right. Women aren't operating in that mentality. But it shows you a completely different mentality, and our women are going to get back into that mentality in the kingdom to come. All right, but women that are coming back to this new truth and this knowledge, you should be considering these things, man, and your mind should be transforming to understand these things, accept these things. Men are going to have multiple women. All right, you know, and she was happy. She wanted to give her husband another woman, man, to bring forth seed, right? So it says, and Leah said, a troop cometh, and she called his name Gad. And Zilpah, Leah's maid, bare Jacob a second son. And Leah said, happy am I, for the daughters will call me blessed, and she called his name Asher. And Reuben went in the days of wheat harvest and found mandrakes in the field and brought them into his mother Leah, his mother Leah. Then Rachel said to Leah, give me, I pray thee, of thy son's mandrakes. And she said unto her, it is a small matter that thou hast taken my husband, or is it a small matter that thou hast taken my husband? And wouldest thou take away my son's mandrakes also? And Rachel said, therefore he shall lie with thee tonight for thy son's mandrakes. All right. And Jacob came out of the field in the evening, and Leah went out to meet him and said, thou must come in unto me, for I surely have hired thee with my son's mandrakes. And he lay with her that night. Right. So whatever system that he has set up, all right, he was supposed to be lying down with Rachel, you know, but then shoot, they cut a deal. Like, look, for these mandrakes, all right, you could lie with him tonight. Well, now I got you tonight. All right, you know. So it says, and the Most High hearkened unto Leah, and she conceived and bare Jacob the fifth son. So, you know, the Lord, all right, well, like you said, hearken unto Leah, and she conceived and bare Jacob the fifth son. And Leah said, the Most High hath given me my hire, because I have given my maid unto my husband. And she called his name Issachar, right? In the NLT, she named him Issachar, for she said, the Most High has rewarded me for giving my servant to my husband as a wife, right? So that was a righteous thing, and the Lord rewarded her when she saw she was barren, all right, and gave her a handmaid to him, you know, to bear forth seed. The Lord saw that and delighted in that and rewarded her by opening up her womb again, all right, to bring forth more children, man, you know. But just showing you the mentality of our woman back then in comparison to now, completely different, all right, completely different, right? So which isn't an excuse, all right, to be a half-assed demon, all right, you know what I'm saying? Well, that was the ancient world, like, you know, your mentality is supposed to change, man. Understand and accept these things, all right. But anyways, I'm gonna jump down. It says, to this paragraph here. As children grew, they learned tasks that were appropriate to their gender. In the agricultural society, children spent the first few years of their lives being cared for by their mothers and other women in the household. While the men were off tending to the fields or herds, the women were completing domestic chores and caring for gardens and vineyards close to home. Infants and young children of both genders belonged to this realm of women, thus learning and observing what took place in the household. As the children grew, they might be sent to tend the family flocks like Joseph and Rachel, Genesis 29 and 9 and 37 and 2. Some jobs were gender neutral, yet other jobs were marked along clear gender lines. For example, both baking and weaving are associated with women in the Bible, so one can imagine girls learning how to carry out these tasks. Right, then it gives, the various precepts right there. Girls will continue to stay in the woman's realm, learning how to make bread, carry out daily household chores, care for younger children, gather dung in various rituals related to the domestic cult. All right. So just showing you how children were being brought up and put to work early, man. All right. They were maturing early, right? And that's all I'm gonna read on this. You can read a little bit more. Originally, I was gonna read another paragraph, but it's all good on that. So I'm gonna jump to the chat GPT real quick. So I had typed in what was the daily life of a child in the ancient Israel in comparison to a child in Western society? What are differences in both their upbringing and responsibilities? It says daily life of a child in ancient Israel, family centered and labor oriented. Children were raised within extended families, often living in multi generational homes. Work began early. By ages 5 through 7, children were already helping with herding animals, fetching water, grinding grain, tending fields, household chores. Girls, especially, work with their mothers, right? So they were being trained at an early age. You were already getting put to work by the time 5 to 7 years old, right? So it says, in that's completely different in this society, man. All right, it says education was home based. Now in this world, they'll be like, oh, that's oppressive, and this and that and the third. It's like, nah, this is an asset to the household. All right, if they're able to work and do certain things to help forward, all right, the survival of us and this and that and the third, and they were gonna do it. All right, children were servants. Okay, it says education was home based. Formal schools did not exist for most of Israel's history. Parents, especially fathers, were responsible for religious and moral instruction. All right, Deuteronomy 6:6 through 7. Boys learn Torah, scripture, family trade or craft, right? We read that in the book of Matthew. Two examples, right? With James, Peter, Andrew, you know, they were all fishermen because what? That was their father's occupation, man. So they continued in that trade, right? Or that craft. Responsibilities as future heads of household. Okay, so they were seeing how their father ran the household, how he had to order and set up certain things, how he was doing business. They were along the way learning these different things, man. Girls learned domestic skills, weaving, cooking, managing the home, preparing for marriage and family life. So they were being prepared for marriage, family life, how to do those different things, right? It says community and religious life. Children were raised in a culture where faith was daily life, not just a weekly event. They participated in the festivals, the Passover, Feast of Booths, etc., Sabbath, structured their weekly rhythm. Discipline and authority. Children were expected to respect parental and community authority. Discipline was strict but understood as part of ensuring survival, maturity, and communal stability. Right, and it was so important that you were contributing to the household to where if you weren't and you were a glutton and you was just some bum, you wasn't doing nothing, you wasn't listening. All right, in the law, what would happen, man? They gotta take that nigga and get his ass up out of there. All right, this is Deuteronomy chapter 21 and verse 18. If a man have a stubborn and rebellious son, now this is a law that would seem strict and harsh, but when you understand our culture and how things were and how it was crazy, if you were here, it is you were being corrected, chastised, and you still weren't contributing to the household, and you was just eating up all the resources, right? And you was just drinking, and you weren't doing anything. Yeah, you had to get your ass up out of there. Okay, you know in this society, that would be crazy because it's not expected for anybody to be doing anything until they like 16, 17, 18. All right. But in our world, like, nah, hold on, man. You've been training him how long? Since he was weaned and how old? He still ain't doing nothing? Oh yeah, he's a waste. All right. He's a waste. Okay. It says if a man have a stubborn and rebellious son, which will not obey the voice of his father or his mother, or the voice of his mother, and that when they have chastened him, will not hearken unto them, so they're giving him the necessary correction, right? Then shall his father and his mother lay hold on him, and bring him out unto the elders of his city, and unto the gate of his place. And they shall say unto the elders of his city, this our son is stubborn and rebellious. He will not obey our voice. He is a glutton and a drunkard. So he eating up everything. He just drinking. He ain't doing nothing. And all the men of his city shall stone him with stones that he die. So shalt thou put evil away from among you, and all Israel shall hear and fear. Right. So here it is. You got John, all right, he just got his ass stoned, okay? So then everybody else, they're like, oh, hell no, let me make sure I'm listening and, I'm I'm taking heed to my parents and, they telling me to do stuff. Yeah, let me get up off my butt, man. Let me make sure I'm doing what they told me to do. Let me make sure I'm contributing to the household, right? This is a righteous law. All right. This is to make sure you ain't have nobody just not doing nothing. Okay. You know, nah, you had to be contributing. You had to be put to work. All right. So going back, where we at? Where we at? So it says discipline was strict but understood as a part of ensuring survival, maturity, and communal stability. Number five, childhood was short. Puberty often marked transition to adulthood, and that's what it was. All right. The woman got on her menstrual cycle. Oh, well, she's ready to be taken into marriage. All right. You know, Boys became responsible for covenant obligations. Girls became eligible for marriage. And we're going to read about that a little bit more in this next article. It says many were married by late teens, right? So that's completely different in this society. Once again, women don't even think about getting married until they're in their late 20s, maybe 30s, right? And then on top of that, because I had typed in the chat GBT, I'll just pull it up on my phone real quick. All right, because the timeline is crazy. And once again, these women from the early age all the way up until the time that they were ready to be given off in marriage, they was on point. They knew how to take care of a household. They knew how to do all these different things, man. They were instructed, right? But you got 30, 40-year-old women in this time period that don't know these things. Okay? Completely behind. All right? But they know how to work in Esau's workplace because that's what they've been trained to do. All right, for 8 hours, damn near every 5 days a week, all the schooling. All right, then they went to college, took more classes. They've been trained, all right, to work in the workforce. Our women were trained to work in the household, and they were efficient and ready. All right, by that time, okay, they were mature and they understood. They understood these things, man. Okay, a damn 13, 14-year old now, she don't know what the hell. You know what I'm saying? All right. Now, physically, she would be ready according to how the Lord set it up, right? But mentally, she don't know how to take care of no household. All right. She don't know how to even cook for a whole household. Okay. She can't take care of children in most cases, and maybe babysit a little bit. But as far as instructing and teaching a child, all right, as having authority, you know what I'm saying? Preparing them for tasks and duties. The women in this society aren't prepared for that. 20, 30-year-old women don't even know how to do that, man. All right? Because it's completely different. It's completely different. But we got to teach what's written in the scriptures. Let you know this is how it was in the ancient world. All right? This is when women were given off into marriage. All right? It says, what I had typed in the chat GBT on my phone here. I said, when do American women begin to think about marriage and preparing for it? All right. So I'm going to just read this real quick. When American women commonly start thinking about marriage, it says childhood to early teens. Now they say 10 to 14, but we're going to keep reading in this and it's going to clarify even more. All right. This is when some girls first form ideas about marriage, but it is usually romantic. Romantic goes back to Rome, right? Idealized or influenced by media, okay? Not practical planning, not focus on readiness, just imagination, okay? So they already start thinking about those thoughts, right? Around the time they start having, getting those urges because they had their period and everything like that, right? So they start thinking about those different things to a degree out of just being hot, all right? Out of just being lust, being hot. So it says, later teens, 15 and 19, this is when many young women begin thinking about what kind of person they might want to marry, whether they want marriage at all. But most are not prepping yet. School friends, sports, college plans are typically the main priority, and that's what it is. Okay, they're not prioritizing being a mother and anything like that, and society isn't telling them to prioritize that. All right, their parents aren't telling them to think and prioritize that. All right, they're telling them to go to school. All right, you playing sports, yeah, you need to go to college and be in the WNBA. You know what I'm saying? College, all that, right? Early adulthood, 20 to 24. This is a major turning point. Women in this stage start to think about career and education goals, financial independence, what a healthy relationship looks like, whether a marriage fits their life plan. Now, keep in mind, this is early adulthood, 20 to 24. This whole time, she already done been with a whole bunch of other people. All right. So instead of this tacky madness that's going on in America where that's unregulated, where women are just hopping around, misdirection, don't know what to do, having no purpose. No, they were given a purpose. They were given a proper direction to go instead of them trying to figure it out. Like, nah, you are supposed to be a mother, all right, in a household. And if they're raised the proper way, they have a desire towards that anyways, man. And they'll feel fulfilled and walking in that role, all right, if it's done properly, man. Okay. See, when you got a woman that is taking care of a house, but in her ear constantly and in her sight constantly, she's seeing what Esau is telling her is happiness, she will begin to be resentful of being a mother because she thinks she's missing out on something else on what real happiness is. All right. And she's not embracing the mentality of a real mother and she gets resentful. Certain women, they'll have children and everything like that. And like, yeah, I want to be I wanted to be a businesswoman and everything like that. But then these businesswomen are regretting the path that they went and they want to be mothers. So then the mother, she leaves her husband to go try and find happiness and do her own thing and be independent, everything like that. Then she ends up regretting it. She destroyed her household. Okay. You know, this is what women take themselves through, man, when they rebel against what the Lord has set up. Right. But anyways, it says, but the majority aren't actively preparing yet, just forming their values and expectations. So none of these women at this point, according to this chat GPT that I got on my phone, they're still not even in preparation for this at 24 years old. There's been no preparation towards being a wife, a mother at all, right? It says mid 20s to early 30s, 25 to 32. This is when most American women seriously start thinking about marriage if they desire it, or if they even want marriage, right? It says this stage involves wanting stability, thinking long term about relationships, career settling down. All right, considering family planning, biological window awareness, right? That clock is ticking. All right. At this age, many women begin prepping themselves emotionally, gaining life skills, financial literacy, communication, conflict resolution, evaluating long term compatibility, and partners, right? So it ain't until the time they're 30, they're thinking about prepping to be a wife, you know? And this is, and once again, going back to the responsibilities and the duties that a mother had, all right, and her impact on the household and the atmosphere, that takes preparation. That takes learning. Okay. That takes time. They think they could just flip a switch. Oh, I'm married and now I know how to be a wife. You don't know how to be a wife. Okay. And then they have a mindset that they're supposed to be worship and serve, where all we read about in the history, read throughout the scriptures, well, you're taught to serve. Okay. It says, at this age, many women begin prepping themselves emotionally. All right. Statistical insight. The average age of first marriage for American women today is around 28 to 29. This means the serious thinking and preparation often starts the mid 20s. Okay. It says, so they don't start seriously thinking about it until the mid 20s, right? But there's been no preparation. They haven't been taught these different things, man. And this is important for the economy of our nation as a whole, for women to be in this proper role. All right. So it says early to mid 30s, 30 to 36 women who are single at this stage often become much more intentional about relationship quality, personal expectations, timeline for family planning, long term compatibility. They're often most selective and focused, right? So at this time, you done been ran through, you done had one night stands, you done had all these flings, you know, your whole mind perspective on everything is just tainted, all right, just through. Okay. To where most of them just are not ready to, they're not wife material. Okay. You're trying to wife after you done did all this, so that's why the way that the Lord has set it up is perfect, man. Okay. It's perfect, right? So going back to this, I'm gonna jump down just for time's sake, because I just want to read one more little excerpt in the article. We're already at 124. So just to make that comparison. All right, so detailed differences in ancient Israelite upbringings, birth to age 3, sharing beginnings, but subtle differences begin early. Similarities between women and men, and this is going to go into a time frame of what women were experiencing, what they were being taught in comparison to men growing up in ancient Israel. All right, so both boys and girls stay close to their mother. All right, both learn basic obedience, household routines, and early religious songs, prayers. All right, this is all the way up to the age of 3. All right, so men were circumcised, all right, on the 8th day. All right, let's get this. So ages 4 to 7, early skill development. All right, girls trained mainly by mother and older women learned weaving, spinning, and sewing, bread preparation and grinding grain, water collection, child care for siblings, household management basics, life centered around the home, Proverbs 31. All right, you can read about the hard-working woman that virtuous woman is in Proverbs the 31st chapter, right? Boys and the daughters will be assisting in that hard work and watching their mothers work that hard to where it was automatic and habitual. All right, and it was crazy not to do those things, man. There's certain places that you go, certain cultures that you're in. It's crazy for women not to prepare the plate for the men. Okay, that's like crazy to them, man. Okay, or it's crazy for here it is. You go to a person's house, all right, and you ate at their crib and everything like that. It's in the culture of the woman to come in and help clean up, at whoever's house that it was, man. So these were things that were just automatic to where women grew up and knowing that. And it wasn't oppressive, it wasn't crazy, because they grew up automatically knowing these things and seeing it on a daily basis to where it was just common. It was a part of the culture. Not in this society, certain things are just like women are don't they just don't do it. All right. It's crazy for them to do it. All right. Boys begin assisting father or older male relatives, learn farming tasks, shepherd herding, basic construction on woodworking, market and community interaction, spent more time outside the home in the fields or workshops, ages 8 to 12. Formal training and identity formation. Girls, home oriented training intensifies. Became heavily involved in food preparation, weaving textiles, managing small tasks in the household economy. Training emphasized modesty, hospitality, resourcefulness, preparation for marriage and motherhood, ages 8 to 12. All right. They were being prepped to go into marriage and motherhood. Mothers taught, and you can't consider that. That's even hard to even think about when you think about an 8-year-old in this society. All right. 8 to 12. Now you put in, okay, you're going to be eventually given to, and she's already done seen her older sisters given off in marriage. All right. The other woman and everything like that. Like that was all a part of the culture. So it wasn't crazy. And this society is crazy. All right. But in our ancient world, in that system, it was completely understood. All right. It says, um, it says, mothers taught the spiritual and moral expectations for wives and mothers later echoed in Titus 2, 3 through 5. Boys' education, scripture, and trade training. Learn Torah orally from father, Deuteronomy 6, 6 through 7. Memorize commandments, psalms, traditions. Apprenticed in the family's trade. And we read that in Matthew the 4th chapter as an example. So if there was a farmer, all right, you was learning how to you was pretty much taking over the father's duties, all right, to where you could do it on your own. Shepherd, carpenter, potter, fisherman, whatever it was. Gain discipline through field work and manual labor. Religious responsibilities increased. All right, ages 13 to 16. Transition to adult roles, right? Because if you were 12, you were now under the covenant, man, as a boy, as a man, right? But it says ages 13 to 16 transition to adult roles. This stage is where gender differences became most pronounced. Girls approach marriageability, right? Because they pass the flower of their age, so they're gonna be given off to marriage, right? Some families arrange marriages by mid to late teens. Responsibilities included running significant parts of the home, cooking for large families. This was expected when you got a wife. All right. When you got a wife in the ancient world, it was bare minimum that she knew how to cook for large families. All right. She knew how to run a home. Okay. She knew how to manage resources. Okay. She was well with, whether it was producing textiles or certain crafts or whatever, it was expected that any woman that you got in the ancient world was already raised to know these different things, man. Okay. So it says girls develop the skills of organization, hospitality, motherhood preparation, their identity centered around becoming a wife, homemaker, and mother. Right? Boys expected to function like adult men. All right, took on full agricultural labor, shepherding alone, building, harvesting, repairing, religious responsibilities expanded. All right, could read Torah, Publicly joined adult men in festivals. Fathers trained sons to be providers, protectors, leaders of family worship, identity centered around becoming head of household. All right. And that's all. Well, I actually read this one more. Ages 17 to 20, interest into adulthood, which we already understand that when you have puberty, go through puberty, the woman passes the flower of her age, that's when they would be considered an adult, right? But it says women often marry by this age. So they were already ready, married by the time they were 17. Okay. You know, they were already married by the time they hit that age, man. All right. It says often married by this age, began managing their own household. Expected qualities included faithfulness, skillfulness, godliness, ability to bear and raise children. Their success was measured by managing the home efficiently, upholding family honor, bearing and raising children. All right. This is what their success was on based off of, not how many degrees they got. Okay, you know, or whatever society standards they got now, right? How independent she is and make how whatever how much money she making a year. That wasn't what your success was measured off of, man. They took pride in how efficient they were in their households. All right. If they were upholding the family honor, because that would be a bad reputation on the father. Like, damn, you ain't raised this nigga don't know how to cook. Like, dang, you looking at the mother like, dang, I mean, what's going on? You eat at home? You looking at the father like, damn, do you eat at home? Because, shoot, over here, your daughter plays, shit, she ain't, you know? It's like, nah, man, she wanted to uphold, knew how to do those certain things, man, right? Bearing and raising children, okay? So, for men, fully expected to support a family, may receive land or inheritance, strong emphasis on strength, work ethic, leadership, skill, and trade, courage. All right. So that's all we're going to read on that. So I'm going to just read this real quick. And this is from Got Questions. I know it's been lengthy, but hey, if you're still here, call out like Yabashim Yawashai. All right. Yeah, it took a little minute, a couple days to go through these different articles and put some of this together. So here it goes. But it says gotquestions.org. Does the Bible say what is the proper age for marriage? Answer. The Bible does not specify any particular age requirement for a person to be married. Rather, it speaks in general terms of marriage being for those who are grown up. All right, it says, see Ruth 1:12 through 13. Both the language and culture of the Bible strongly support the idea that puberty at bare minimum is a condition that must be met before becoming someone's spouse. All right. This fits with one of the historical purposes of marriage, conceiving and rearing children. Scriptural evidence indicates that those too young for childbearing are not candidates for marriage, though there's no explicit age given in the Bible. And we read here in Paul's letter, 1 Corinthians 7:36. But if any man think that he behaveth himself uncomely toward his virgin, if she pass the flower of her age, and need so require, let him do what he will, he sinneth not, let them marry. So it mentions what? A woman passing the flower of her age, right? When you read in the other translations, it says, let me see, is it the CSB? All right, in the NKJV, but if any man thinks he is behaving improperly toward his virgin, if she is past the flower of her youth. And when you go into the law, it talks about a woman's flowers being upon her, meaning what? When she's on her cycle. So passing the flower of her age is what? When she has her cycle. That indicates that what? She is ready to be given in marriage physically. All right. And in the ancient world, women were prepared not only physically, but they were prepared mentally, all right, socially, spiritually, okay, to make that transition into taking care of their own households. In this society, that's not so. Women are prepared that way, man. All right, they aren't groomed and raised the way that our women were groomed and raised, and our men were groomed and raised in the ancient world, man. All right, it says, that's all we'll read on that. All right, but you get the point right there, man. Passing the flower of her age, right? So going back, it says, it is reasonable to look at the practices of ancient Judaism for cultural considerations on the proper age for marriage. According to tradition, boys were not considered men and therefore not marriageable until the age of 13 and really 12. All right, going to the example with Yahweh Shai, man. All right, he was 12 years old when he separated from his parents and he was teaching in the temple, he's about his father's business, man. That's when he got on that mission, right? It says girls were not considered women until age 12. All right. These ages are more or less correspond to the onset of puberty, right? So some women had their cycle when they were 13. Certain women had it when they were 11. All right. According to the law, according to the law, according to how the Lord set it up, he gave the woman the menstrual cycle at that time, all right, to show that they were ready to be given in marriage. And if things were being done according to the system that the Lord has set up, how our forefathers and foremothers raised children, how we did in the ancient world, then she would not only be physically ready, but she would be mentally and spiritually, all right, prepared and groomed to be able to take on that role, all right, when the time saw fit, all right. When her parents, all right, it was like, okay, cool, she's 13, she had her cycle. Certain instances, they would wait a year, or they would betroth her to a man, all right, and then he might wait some time until he actually dealt with her and so on and so forth. This is how it went down, man. Okay. It says, these ages are more or less correspond to the onset of puberty. While those ages might seem too young to us, they're not unusual ages for getting married historically. It has only been within the last century or so that the average age of getting married has drifted into the late 20s and early 30s. This has been unheard of until the last century, okay? And even your grandparents, all right? A lot of them were young, right? Your grandfather might have been a lot older, grandmother a lot younger. You know what I'm saying? This was common, all right? It's also important to recall that maturity, often used as a benchmark for allowing sexuality in marriage, is highly cultural. In modern Western countries, people are not generally expected to be self sufficient until they are nearly in their 20s or even later. For most of human history, however, people were expected to grow up much sooner. The age of getting married was normally young, as everyone was expected to mature socially and emotionally more quickly than today. All right. That's very plain, very understandable. The Hebrew language also supports the idea that puberty is a requirement for a legitimate marriage. Ezekiel 16 contains a metaphor for God's relationship to Israel. And I was going to grab it, but I'm going to just read through this information. You can check out that chapter. It says, in this passage, the Most High cares for Israel, pictured as an orphan girl in various stages of development. The Lord first sees her birth, then watches her grow up. You grew and developed and entered puberty. Your breasts had formed and your hair had grown. Later, I passed by, and when I looked at you, I saw that you were old enough for love. I spread the corner of my garment over you, verses 7 through 8. In this illustration, it's only after the girl arrives at physical maturity, sometime after, not during puberty, when she is old enough to love, that she is ready for marriage. Other translations say the girl grew tall and came of age, the NET, and grew up, matured, and became a young woman. So, I mean, that's very plain, man. See, it might make you cringe or whatever because of this society, all right? But what you gonna call the Lord, all right? Like he's a weirdo or something? Hell nah, man. All right. The Lord used that analogy when she passed the flower of her age. Now it was time, you know, to lay down with her, man. All right, completely different culture, man. All right, and we're not gonna shun or stray away from reading what was written, all right, because it makes Jake feel uncomfortable, man. All right, he ain't going out and looking for no damn 12, 13, 14-year-old woman. All right, but this is how it was in the ancient world, man. All right, and we would be shunning, or if we didn't bring out these different things through the spirit, man. All right. We clearly tell Jake we ain't practicing this, don't do this. All right. But this is how it was in the ancient world, man. All right. So it says the New Testament has even less let me see. All right. Yeah, I'll read this. The New Testament has even less to say about the age of getting married. Still, there are clues in the New Testament Greek similar to those in the Hebrew. For example, 1 Corinthians 7 and 36 use the word hyperkamos in reference to a female. In this case, it's a young woman who is engaged to be married. Hyperkamos is translated as past her youth. in the NASB, past the flower of her age, and we read this precept, or past marriageable age. The word literally means ripe. All right, ripe. Okay. Now the scriptures talk about a woman in ripe age. This is Sirach chapter 26 and 17. As the clear light is upon the holy candlestick, I'll start at 16. As the sun when it ariseth in the high heaven, so is the beauty of a good wife in the ordering of her house, which we read multiple times. As the clear light is upon the holy candlestick, so is the beauty of the face in ripe age. All right. So the ripe age was after the time that what? A woman had her cycle. Okay. Ripe age. Okay. That word ripe means what? Mature. All right. Developed. Right. The same analogy that the Lord used in the book of Ezekiel, the 16th chapter, when it says that what? Now it was the time of love. All right. She had developed. Her breasts had grown. Her hair had grown long. Right. You know, it said that what? It was the time of love. So the Lord set up that system because like, okay, now this is the time biologically when a woman is to be prepared to go into marriage, man. Okay. So going back to this, right? It says a common euphemism. It says the word literally means ripe. A common euphemism in many cultures for describing a woman's capability for bearing children. Paul's inclusion of the word definitely indicates that the marriageable age was sometime after puberty when a woman is fully grown. But scripture nowhere sets a definitive marriageable age. So it's not like a set, you know, it's when like it's 12 all the time. That's like when a woman passes her flowers. All right. Some were earlier, some were older. All right, but that's just what it is, right? Physical maturity is a must, but when a girl reaches maturity can vary. The 12-year-old in Mark 5:41 and 42 is still a little girl and obviously not ready for marriage, right? And I would have to read that, to see what that's going into. But that's really it, man. Really wanted to take some time to really dive into painting the picture of how it was in the ancient world and everything like that. In comparison to this world and this society, it was completely different, man. All right, but hopefully, that was edifying, man. I'm gonna just end it right there and give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushai, Ba'ashem, Rakakwadash. Double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone who rule well. Peace and salutations to the hopeful elect, pushing out this word in all sincerity and in truth. With that, I'm gonna say shalom.